welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. My name is Andy Sometimes Mouse, and I talk about books and book related things, and today I am giving you my August wrap up. I'm filming it on time. I'm not having to refilm it. Let's all cross our fingers I don't have to refilm it, that I'm just going to film it, I'm going to edit it, and nothing's going to get deleted by accident, and I don't have to cry, because I'm pretty sure it was last month that happened. Let's all hope and pray that everything goes well. Okay, let's go ahead and get into the stats for this month. A bit of a downslope from last month. I read an obscene amount last month. I think I was just exhausted last month and all I could think about was reading. Like it's all I had capacity to think about. So we've gone down a little bit from there, but that's okay. In August, I read a total of 23 books. For pages read, that was 3,324. For audiobook hours listened, it was 156 hours and 27 minutes, which as days is 6 days, 12 hours and 27 minutes. I averaged 136.5 pages a day, and I averaged 8 hours and 5 minutes of audiobook listening a day. And my average rating was a 3.3. We're kind of just staying in that 3-star range, I feel like, between 3.1 and 3.5, I feel like, for this year. I think that's been kind of the consistent. Although we did have a 1-star rating this month, and I don't do a lot of 1-star ratings. And I had a 1-star rating last month, too. Maybe it was 2 stars, I don't know. I purchased a total of 4 books, which cost me $17.46. I checked out a total of 14 library books, which saved me $415.78. I guess those books were very expensive. I don't know. I reread 4 books. 13 of the books I read were audiobooks, 10 of them were ebooks, and none of them were physical copies. It's fine, I don't have a ton of physical copies. 19 of the books I read were adult, 4 of them were young adult, and I didn't read any children or middle grade books. A lot of adult books, actually. For genres, and we will see a book link update at the end of the year. For genres, I read 2 sci-fi, 8 fantasy, 1 romance, 1 historical, 1 thriller, or no, 2 thrillers, 7 horror, no classics this month, I will read them next month, 1 nonfiction, and 1 contemporary. So still hitting my goal of reading a book from every genre every month, other than classics, which I'm doing every other month. I'm still hitting that goal pretty accurately, and I'm pretty pleased that I'm managing to do this, honestly. So let's go ahead and talk about my top books of the month, because I just know that my bottom books of the month are going to be a bit of a rant, a bit of a rage here. In the vlog where I read this video, I interrupt my own video. Like, I do a second update for the day, which I don't do very much unless I'm complaining about something, just to complain about that book. So we'll come back to that. For my top books, I only have 3 of them this month. The first up, we have Sister Snake by Amanda Lee Coe. This is the green snake, white snake mythology, kind of. It's loosely based around those 2 sisters. And I really enjoyed the fantasy aspects of this. I enjoyed the historical aspect of this, how the 2 snakes became humanoid, what their life has looked like living for such a long amount of time, and the dynamic of sisterhood and family in general, and how that can shift and change throughout time, as well as conversations around the way that women have been treated historically and also still in modern day, around pregnancy and body autonomy and that kind of thing. I found it to be a really interesting book. Much more interesting, honestly, than I expected it to be. Our 2 sisters are both very fascinating characters, so I enjoyed reading things from both of their perspectives. And at no point was I confused about which side of the story I was reading. Like, I understood both, like, when I was reading which sisters. It wasn't written, like, from their point of view, but it was a chapter focused on, like, what's happening for each one of them in their life. In, like, it wasn't written in, like, first person point of view. I get them mixed up, but I really did enjoy it. I thought that it was really well written, and I think it was a pretty quick read as well, or at least I just, like, flew through it, which, speaking of, second book on this list, I read in one day, which I don't do very often. That's going to be The Night Guest by Hildernut's Daughter. I'm totally butchering that. I'm so sorry. Hopefully you can see it in the cover here. This was translated, and I think it was Swedish, maybe, before. Our main character is experiencing, like, just feels like she's not sleeping, is waking up covered in bruises and stuff, and really sore, and then discovers that maybe she's sleepwalking, and then weird shit is happening in her sleep, and she starts to slowly figure out what's going on in her sleep. It was a very intriguing read. I was very invested to find out what the fuck is happening here. Little bit of like, our trauma is the horror, but also like ghosts are also a horror. I feel like it did a really good point of that. I also think that it encapsulated the feeling of like, you know, something's wrong, but no one is taking you very seriously, or they think that you're just seeking attention or drug seeking, when in this case the main character was just genuinely was sleepwalking to miles away and doing weird shit and then coming back, and it was like she just could not get help until things escalated, like drastically escalated. And then I mean, she never gets help in the book. I don't really think that's a spoiler, but she never really gets help. So it was a really interesting story, and I don't know. I still kind of think about, like, I catch myself thinking about it. And it's a novella, honestly. It's pretty short, so I highly recommend it. And next, last but not least, on the top books list, we have a book my mom recommended to me and also Landis recommended to me. And honestly, having two people recommend a book, two very different people recommend a book to me was wild. So I was like, all right, sure, I'll read it. And that's going to be The Dream Hotel by Leila Alami. This book is definitely an anti-prison conversation set in a fictional world. Now, I am sometimes a bitch about these kinds of books, and I think that it's for absolutely fair reason, and the fair reason is that I've been through it. I haven't been incarcerated, but my husband was incarcerated, and so I, one, have educated myself almost too much about abolitionist mindset and conversation, and the thoughts around it, and then I also personally know a lot about how having someone you love be incarcerated affects your life. And so I think that sometimes when I read these books, I either find them too info dumpy, like you're telling me too many, how do I word this? You're too heavy-handed in the way that you are handing me this information in a fictional book. If it is supposed to be fiction, then I feel like giving me information about the American prison system, which, to be clear, is not just in the United States, the United States prison system. Other countries use the United States prison system as their own prison systems. So when I'm referring to that, I just mean globally. I think sometimes books are too heavy-handed with the way that they talk about it, and it takes me out of the book and makes it hard for me to find the book particularly impactful, because so many of the talking points there are in a lot of the abolitionist papers that I've already read. So no, I don't go into these kinds of books expecting them to change my mind or change my thought process about incarceration, and I think that these books usually seek to change someone's mind, but if I'm already in that camp, right. This, however, while it did not obviously change my opinion because it is in the same camp as me, I don't feel it was particularly heavy-handed because it wasn't info dumping on me. It wasn't telling me about the prison system that already exists. It was talking about, in an imaginary world, they take data like your social media, your history, your family's history, your dream data. If you signed up for your dream data to get ingested, it takes all of that information and determines whether or not you are at risk for committing a crime. And if you are at risk for committing a crime, then you're put in this observation area where they determine whether or not you're genuinely going to be committing this crime or if you're clear. And they're only supposed to hold you for 21 days, but that never really happens because that never really happens. And also, the system is making money off of these individuals. They have to work, and also working gets your points lower, because higher points means higher risk. It gets your points lower. Following rules gets your points lower, but the rules are determined by the people enforcing them, more or less, and if, say, you piss off the wrong person, then they can kind of decide that you've broken a rule based on their interpretation, and then your points go up. This is not that far from what happens in the prison system. The bond system is inherently that. You put someone who has not been charged with anything is just suspected of something and you incarcerate them, it is a financial burden on everyone involved. Their rights are taken away despite there being no proof that they've done anything yet. I mean, not that there's no proof, but like no actual sentencing, etc. And some of these people are not supposed to, like, they're not supposed to be held for an extended amount of time, but they get held for years and years and years and years and years. And so that was a really fantastic conversation to me. It also, I feel, really represented how, while the wife is the one who's incarcerated, it still showed that it is hard for the person on the outside financially. It talked about the financial drain. It talked about the emotional drain and how they like start to get to know the other people who visit, and have conversations with them. And I imagine the person who's incarcerated feels left out of the loop and like you're trying to catch them up, but it's hard to. And it makes life difficult with a partner in either, like on either side. And I feel like this was all represented really, really well. On top of it, the story was just inherently very interesting. How do they enforce this? What entities decided this? What corporations and what politicians, and what were their stances? And it was just really interesting to see. I thought it was a fantastic conversation, honestly. It's honestly probably the top book this month in general, because I felt like it handled this conversation really well, because we're not that far from that situation, right? We're genuinely not that far from being in that scenario. And I think that people should really take those things into consideration when they're talking about the prison system. So anyway, I really enjoyed it. I thought that it handled it all very, very well. Okay. I didn't know that I was gonna talk about that book for such a long time. I don't know where that came out of. Sorry, that wasn't even in. I don't really script my reviews when I do them for these videos, but I didn't plan that. All right. Okay, let's talk about my least favorite book this month. I have 2 books listed here. I'm not gonna talk about the first one because I just put it here because I was like, dang, I don't have any books that I particularly hate this month. Wrong. That was before I read Romantic Comedy by Curtis Sittenfeld. Romantic comedy is supposed to be, you guessed it, a romantic comedy. Rather, it's really just supposed to be a romantic contemporary book set in the middle of the pandemic, or rather, right before the pandemic, and then during the pandemic, and then the epilogue is like at the end. Like after the pandemic. First off, this book has 3 chapters and an epilogue, and I think an intro. I hate long chapters. I hate long chapters. I truly do. They make it very hard for me as somebody who I don't like to stop reading until I've finished a chapter. It frustrates me to do that. I know that's a personal thing and not on the author, but I think a lot of readers feel that way. Like, okay, I will finish reading when I finish this chapter. The first chapter, I was like 50% into the book already. Huh? So I found that incredibly irritating. On top of that, the second chapter is just emails. It's just told in the form of emails. Again, I don't mind that formatting, but for a whole chapter that is like 80, 90 pages to be just emails, I'm so glad. I was supposed to listen to this book, but I ended up reading it with my eyes instead. I'm so glad, because I don't know if you guys have listened to an email or text exchange via audiobook. It is usually horrible. So I can only imagine that a whole chapter of it was just fucking insufferable. I've seen short, full chapters that are written like this, and that's fine, but this was like 80 pages or something. So like the formatting of the book, shitty, terrible. What the fuck are you doing? So then the other issue, I don't even have moral issues with this book. A lot of the time with romance books, I'm like, oh, I have moral issues and here's X, Y, and Z. Consent. Kink. You know, those are the things that I talk about that piss me off in romance books most of the time. No! These characters are just so awful! Our main character's like in her 40s. She thinks she's the ugliest person that's ever walked the planet, I guess. She works at this fake SNL type thing and meets this rock star, and that's who she's supposed to be falling in love with. They had no chemistry. They texted loosely like friends in their emails. Their back and forth was like whatever, and then when they finally like met up in person after their emails, it was whirlwind romance or whatever, but it just felt so weird. The whole dynamic felt weird and fake. Like it felt fake, which I know it's a book, a fictional book, but it felt fake. Nothing about it felt realistic to me. On our main character is supposed to be a comedy writer, but she's amazingly enough one of the least funny characters I've ever read from, and she's insufferable. Our first part of the book, our first chapter, that is, you know, 50% of the book, we get introduced to this slew of characters and their interpersonal problems, and none of them matter. By the end of the book, none of those things were important. None of those things mattered. So why did we talk about them? This book could have been a novella, honestly, if you took out the nonsense that took away from the chemistry of the characters, because I was too busy learning about all of these other characters that by the end of the book, we don't care about all of that stuff. None of that stuff really mattered. Why was I reading it? I wanted to DNF this book so badly, but I would get to like the end of a chapter and think, oh yay, the next chapter will probably be shorter. It was probably just like the one chapter. No. I don't know how I didn't realize this book had like no chapters, and so the chapters were obscenely long. I missed that, I guess, when I was planning it. But like, oh my god, who taught you how to format a book? Did AI format this book? It was really bad. It was really bad, and I really hated it. And that's how I feel about that. It is absolutely going to be on the bottom book of this month, like the all-time bottom book of this month. No doubt about it. It is the one I rated 1 star. It was a fucking horrible book. 0 out of 5 stars, really. If I could have rated it 0 stars, I probably would have. Anyway, that's it. That's my wrap up. That book pissed me off, and now I'm riled up again. That's my wrap up. Those are the books I liked and didn't like. Those are the stats. If you enjoyed this video, you know the drill. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share. Comment down below if you've read any of the books, or if you have read this romantic comedy book and you feel the same way about the formatting, or in general if you feel the same way about long chapters, because I think that's just like, I don't think I'm the only one. Like, I think a lot of people feel that way about long chapters. I don't think I've ever met anyone who likes long chapters. And this was like more than a long chapter. This was like obscene. This was torture, actually. I felt like I was being imprisoned by this book. Like, release me from this chapter, for the love of God. Anyway, I'll move on, sorry. But if you have read any of these books and you want to talk about it, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to chat about it. I post videos every Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, which means I will see you later this week. Also, I don't post on the first full week of the month to take breaks, because that's important. Later this month? No. On CLEARURSHT, like the Twitter and the Instagram and stuff, there should be some CLEARURSHT announcements coming out next week, I think, so stay tuned for that. I think it's just the schedule, but that's still pretty exciting, in my opinion. So stay tuned for that, and yeah, I think that's gonna be it. So I will talk to you guys later. Don't forget to take your meds, drink your water, and do something today to take care of yourselves. Okay, thanks, bye.